Hello, everybody, and welcome back to the Drive Pink Dialogue. I'm your host, Saur, and we have so much to talk about today. Inter Miami is doing things quick, they're doing things fast. So, we are going to talk about every single thing that's happened in the last 24 hours. But before that, I'm with my co host, Scotty. How are you feeling, my man? Did you like my intro today?
I was beautiful. Everything was incredible. I'm so proud of you.
Thank you.
And I want to take a moment and just give you a slow clap because it was beautiful. Yeah, dude, everything, everywhere, all at once is what Inter Miami has felt like over the last 36 hours. I'll give it because some of this came on Thursday, but busy day. We were thinking about doing an episode on Wednesday, decided not to do it, hold off, and I'm glad we did because there is so much to talk about, 6 or 7 topics today. And I think we could do a full hour-long episode on about 5 or 6 of them. And so it's just, I'm really excited to talk Herons. Let's get into it.
Yeah, and we've got a couple of really exciting signings happening over the last, 24 hours, but also a couple of other breaking news that's basically happened in the last 20, 30 minutes. What should we start with? Should we start with the normal,
let's.
easy news, or should we start with the breaking exclusive news? Because you've already spoken about one of them, and I haven't
Let's
listened to that episode. So
okay, let's start with the breaking news. But before that,
okay.
I didn't get a chance to ask you, man. You did that with so much enthusiasm and energy that I forgot to ask. How are you feeling, man?
I'm feeling great, man. It's a midday episode that we haven't done in a while now. So this is a different change of pace. I'm excited, but I'm most excited about being 1 week away from the preseason. I can't wait for Inter Miami to play again. I'm missing Miami football. So I'm very excited. I'm looking forward to it. I'm well rested. The holidays are officially done, and we are now heading into the business end of the, preseason. So excited for that.
Yeah, me too. And so let's get into it. The breaking news. And by the way, the cool thing about coming on at different times is different people get to an opportunity to come live with us. And I see you guys in the chat, and that's so cool. And so, Kareem, long time since you've been in the chat, but you're one of the earliest ones. So I appreciate you being here and hope you're doing well. Oscar Stardy back with the Herons for another season. Broke about 45 minutes ago. Herman Grova Garcia breaks the news. Ustadi back with the Herons, 1-year contract. We had speculated that there wasn't exactly a goalkeeper to help us in next weekend's game against Club America because Rick Callender's on international duty. They don't have a backup, or they didn't have a backup. Sounds like they now have their backup. It's Oscar Ustadi. We saw him play once against Toronto last year. He was fine. I think we were very comfortable with him. And if he's going to be the guy, he's going to be the number 2 goalkeeper this year. And I think we feel good about that from a talent perspective, right?
Yeah, I think this was the best addition that he could have had against Toronto. Played one game for Inter Miami, got injured after that, and looks like he did just enough to deserve that contract again and being brought back on for the next season. Talent-wise, I'm very happy with this. I think he's going to be a good backup goalkeeper. Obviously, I expect him to get more minutes than he did last season. Hopefully, he does well. Seems to be good with his feet, very composed, a veteran in that between the sticks, and I think he's good at organizing the defense. So happy with it on a talent basis. I just wonder whether this is the right move when it comes to the transfer window because I don't think the goalkeeping position is as important, at least at this point in time. So letting go of CJ Dos Santos, letting go of Cole Jensen, and then replacing him with a Starry, who's most importantly for me going to be taking up that international roster spot, is a little bit concerning. But hey, one misstep in a transfer window that's shaping up to be really well. So I'm happy with it. Not too fussed about it. Don't know what the extent of his contract is, whether he's sticking it out until the summer or the full year. It'll be interesting to see how it plays out. But overall, yeah, a few reservations, but talent-wise, I think this is a good move.
Yeah, I think you nailed it. I just want to go back to the tweet that broke it to see if there's any more detail other than just him signing. It looks like it's just him signing on a 1-year contract extension. He'll be in goal in net on Saturday.
Yep.
And so that's solved. He was very good. And so if this is the guy that you're having as your number 2 keeper, I think you're fine with that. He takes up an international roster slot. And I don't know if we should have a long discussion about that now, but I was sort of playing with the roster, playing with the spreadsheets this morning. They have 12 players currently in need of an international roster slot. It's 11 if you don't include Emerson Rodriguez. It's 10 if Yannick Bright gets his residency permit. So that's a lot already, and that doesn't include all of these new signings that we are rumored to be making official any day now. Gonzalo Lujan, Tadeo Allende, Telasco Segovia. And so that takes us up to 13. And I still think there's room to go get another goalkeeper. I still think there's room to get another center back. I think there's still room to potentially add a major piece in the summer. And so you're talking about needing 15, 16, 17 international roster slots. And I'm not sure if a backup goalkeeper is the best use of that. But I think using one on your goalkeeping position is okay. And so maybe this means Drake Callender staying.
Yeah, and for me, what this signals is we were trying to sign Losada. That didn't happen. Something fell through in that particular negotiation. And as a result, we reverted to our backup option, which was Oscar Ustari. Makes sense, understandable. They were already, based on rumors, looking at a goalkeeper signing that would take up the international spot. I'll be interested to know whether Losada was being signed as a first choice keeper or whether he was being signed as a backup goalkeeper. I completely agree with you. I think Drake Callender is going to be staying now, considering that Oscar Ustari doesn't necessarily scream to me a first choice goalkeeper signing. And I don't know if this is the position that you want to play around too much with, right?
Yeah, he's number two, right? He's going to be the number two
he has
keeper.
to be number two. Yeah.
So I don't think I know people have speculated they'll bring in another goalkeeper and Drake Callender will be number two. And then Ustari would be number three. Like, that's not going to be what this is. Now, here's what I will say.
Your international roster spot on a third choice goalkeeper. That's just bad business.
Yeah, I agree with that. And I think that's sort of the biggest takeaway from this is I think this means we're likely getting Drake Callender again, which maybe didn't seem the most likely scenario a month and a half ago, but here we are, and this is how the offseason's unfolded. And I think if these are the two goalkeepers that we see in 2025, I think we're okay with that. I'm kind of sad because Drake Callender getting traded would have won me bingo, but no, I think this is good. Blaze says that he still thinks Callender's on the way out, but I tend to disagree. One thing I do want to say, last year when Ustari came in, people were talking about give him the reins, let him start. Drake Callender, if he has a bad game, let Ustari go. That was never going to happen last year because Ustari came in halfway through the season. Drake was a captain, was integral part of this team. I think this year now, with a new coach and Ustari's coming in from the start of preseason, you can have those conversations in a more real way. If Drake Callender struggles for a couple games or if he makes some critical mistakes, I think you can have this be a little bit more of a competition than it would have been last season.
Yeah, and I think the drop-off from Drake Callender to CJ Dos Santos is maybe a little bit more than it is between Drake Callender and Oscar Ustari. I completely agree with you. I mentioned it briefly, but essentially what I was getting at was he played only one game last season. If he'd obviously stayed on for longer, he would have got more minutes. CJ Dos Santos did not get that many minutes. He played, 2 games in the Leagues Cup, I believe, or I believe it was the Leagues Cup, and he didn't necessarily impress. I think if Oscar Ustari does well, he will definitely be playing a lot more games and also maybe gets in a position of challenging Drake for a spot at that number one goalkeeper role, because if Drake Callender doesn't hit the ground running, if Javier Mascherano doesn't see him play the way that he wants his goalkeeper to play and Oscar Ustari does enough, there's definitely a conversation to be had that there'll be more competition between the sticks. And I'm okay with that. I'm happy with that.
Do you think they did this because of the preseason game next week? Do you think this is a little bit of a panic move?
I don't think so.
Because why is this happening right now? Right, this is my question. Because if this is your backup goalkeeper, it's sort of the thing you can do the day before the season, especially a player like Ustari who's been around the team. I'm wondering if they've decided they're going to stick with Callender. And so you've got the number one keeper, go get your number two, and then you're just finished with the position. Like, that could be part of it. Or it's like they're panicking about next weekend and not having a goalkeeper because Callender's on international duty. And they're signing him and making this decision, which is a big decision, right? Because of the international roster slot. and he takes up a senior team roster slot. I would hate it to be because they are panicking about next weekend because it's a friendly. You can put Owen Finnerty or Robert Taylor in goal, right? It doesn't really matter. So I actually am tending to think this means that they're committing to Drake Callender. I know that's not sort of what everyone else's thoughts are, but that's sort of where I'm at with this right now.
No, I'm on the same page with you. I would like to give them a little bit more credit because of the business that they've done already in the transfer window. It doesn't seem like they're making panic moves. What this says to me is they had somebody in mind for that maybe second choice or competitive goalkeeping spot. It didn't come through. Losada, as I said, didn't happen.
I think so.
They decided, okay, we're going to stick with Drake Callender as our number one. And their backup option was Oscar Astari because it's the safe bet, right? You don't want to go around chasing another goalkeeper and wasting time in that spot. And it felt like Losada was their number one choice in this position. Didn't happen, so they went for their backup, who was Oscar Astari. I don't think it's a panic move thinking about the preseason game because let's be honest, it's a preseason game. You can put a 16-year-old in between the sticks. Nobody really cares what's going to happen, what the score is going to be like. I don't even know if Messi's going to play that game. Well, he may play half the game, but again, it's a preseason game. There's no need to ruin your entire transfer strategy just because you don't have a goalkeeper available for that preseason game. So I would like to give them credit and say it's not a panic move and they've thought this through. And what this signals is that Drake Callender is staying as a number one. Obviously, Kareem disagrees with me, and that's understandable as well. But I would like to think that it's not the case.
It's just that everything over the past 2 weeks from the ownership group or from the sporting group has been like planned and executed and identified, and they got their guy. And so it doesn't feel like they're in panic mode. And so I want to give them the benefit of the doubt. But
and there's no need to be in panic mode, honestly. Like,
but
it doesn't make sense.
I don't know. And Drake Callender, he's going to miss the first preseason game. He can probably be there for the second preseason game. So
yeah,
I think I think reading the tea leaves and listen, all of this broke again an hour ago now. But reading the tea leaves, my initial instinct is they're going to stick with Callender for number one and Ustari number two, and maybe Ustari can be a more competitive figure to Drake Callender this year, but I think that's what their plan is right now, and maybe that'll change in the summer, but for now I think that's what they're doing.
Absolutely.
Okay, we have so much to talk about today.
I know.
Let's get back to the team. Sorry about that. They're back on Monday. We saw some pictures over the last couple of days. They came back in to do their physicals, make sure they're all physically fit and doing what they're supposed to do for their contracts, staying at the right weight and all that stuff. But they're back on the pitch on Monday, the 13th, and it is preseason. Like, it's over. The offseason is over. Messi's back. Suarez is back. They've talked to the media. We had media day. Javier Mascherano had some quotes. We'll talk about that. Fafa Picault came in and got his official contract signed and took the pictures and all that. So how you feeling, man? It's here. It's here.
I'm excited. I'm very excited. I think the transfer window, we still need to make a couple of more signings, but it's shaping up to be a really good window for us. We're trying to target some good players, but what's most important to me is that they're targeting the right positions, right? It seems like they know what the weaknesses of this team were last season, and that's why we are looking at positions that we need to bolster and also bring in more reinforcements. Overall, it's looking good. And yeah, Fafa Picault, man, happy to have him on board officially. He's the only official player that we've announced so far, right?
Correct. And by the way, this picture, I chose this picture because he's wearing this sweatshirt, and it is so beautiful. And I really hope they put him up for sale because I would like one. That is a very nice sweatshirt. Mascherano had comments at Media Day, which was over the last 48 hours. I think it was on Thursday. And he was talking about how they needed to bring in guys. And obviously the Tadeo Allende and Gonzalo Lujan news had broken over the last couple of weeks. Fafa Picault in. But he had mentioned they still need to bring in players.
Yeah.
And we hadn't really heard about Segovia yet. The Baltasar Rodriguez thing, which we're going to talk about, that's still not finalized yet, but he made it seem like we need to sign a defender. Defense is a big priority, filling out the roster. and it's something that they're focused on. And so that makes me think we are not done yet. We still got room to grow. And I'm really, I'm excited about it, man.
Yeah, it's a good sign that our coach is recognizing that we need more players. And honestly, call me naive, but it feels like we're going to bring in at least 3 or 4 more players. Whether
I
it's
think so
that
too.
first quality player that we bring in for each position, or whether it's a backup, regardless, I think we need more depth in the squad. Especially the fact that I don't consider the Baltasar Rodriguez signing as a, signing that's going to help the squad in too much, because he's basically replacing Facu
Yeah,
Farías.
it's a one
It's
for
a
one.
1-to-1. And for me, that doesn't necessarily help the depth of the squad. That's what I was trying to get at. So a lot more signings to come in. That centre back position, that's the one I'm most excited about, because I want to see who they bring in. It needs to be someone who's not young, obviously, but someone who's just the right age to be able to command the defense, has the right profile in terms of keeping the ball, playing from the back. It's a very, very important signing. You need to take a lot of attributes. And I think the reason we haven't got that yet is perhaps they don't necessarily know who they're going to bring in, or they haven't really put their finger on who that person is who's going to fill that main center back role. And that's okay for me, because you can't get this wrong. You can't have a panic signing in that center back role. So I'm okay with that. But yes, more signings need to come in soon, for sure.
Yeah, and if you look at the senior team roster and you add all the guys they have now or have been rumored to be linked to, they still have 3 senior roster slots available, potentially a U22, potentially a DP spot. So they have room. They have the cap space. They have the allocation money. They're tight on international roster slots, but you can generally go find those later on. And so I think they got to sign more players. Center back, right?
Maybe another center back.
Well, I think that I thought at the beginning of the offseason they would go for a right back and 2 center backs. I think Gonzalo Lujan, just the way he profiles, I think might be
helps that.
both a center back and a right back. So
yeah.
I think we're in a position to only add 1 center back from this point on. But listen, let's talk about that after, because I want to talk about some of the breaking news over the last couple of days, now that we've moved on from Oscar Ustari, and get to what I think is the most exciting signing of the window so far, and really the most exciting signing since, I mean, really for me, the more I read into this kid, the more excited I get. He is so exciting. I woke up to this news yesterday and I was so thrilled, and I just kept reading about him, and it was so exciting that I decided I just had to go talk about it. And so I did 45 minutes on Telasco Segovia, who has the most difficult to remember name I think I've ever seen. But I think he's going to have a really memorable impact in Inter Miami. You didn't listen to yesterday, but I do want to hear your thoughts, and you didn't do that because you want a fresh perspective. Talk to me about how you're feeling about this signing.
Yeah, one thing we like to do on this podcast is make sure that Scotty and I don't necessarily speak into the echo chamber, and we agree on certain things at some points, but we also disagree on a few things. By the looks of it, you consider this as a very, very positive signing, but I deliberately, as you said, didn't listen to yesterday's podcast because I wanted to make my own opinions, and I've done something here. I've taken notes. I watched some of his highlight reel from his under-23 in the pre-Olympics. I watched some of his highlights from last season. And I've written down a few buzzwords that came to mind. And I want to ask you if any of those were words that you used during yesterday's podcast. So the first thing I wrote down was tenacious and gets stuck in. He's a sort of a midfielder who seems feisty, right? He seems energetic. The second thing I used was engine, and I used the word physicality, but not in the sense of an athletic Diego Gomez tank type of a build. He just seems like someone who can run for days. Someone like a Kevin De Bruyne maybe, who doesn't, or a Bruno Fernandes, who doesn't necessarily look like someone who is strong and athletic, but they just have that engine that can keep running, covering a lot of space in the midfield. So tenacious, gets stuck in, defensively seems good because he does a lot of recovery from what I've seen, gets a lot of interceptions, goes back on the run and chases down the opposition when the team desires. Think works both ways, is a box-to-box according to me. Think he runs forward really well, but also does the defensive duties a lot better. Skilled with the ball and good under pressure, hard to get the ball off him. just, again, that tenacity that seems to brush players off and constantly fighting for that ball. We talk about Messi always running into players and then coming out with the ball at the end of it somehow or the other. He seems very similar in that sense. I said the ball just sticks to his feet, which something stood out for me. Plays all across the midfield, as I said. I think he can play as an 8, but he can also maybe do that 8-6 hybrid role, perhaps, when we need him to. Knows how to score a goal, gets in the box and gets at the end of balls, but also I think takes a long shot as well. So again, that box to box, has an eye for a pass. That was something that I really liked about him. There were certain angles that he was finding with his pass and his highlights that I really liked. And then one thing I said was sometimes looks really, really pretty, but then sometimes looks like a fighter. So that was my crux of assumptions that I made based on a very small highlight package, let's be honest. But for me, this was the exact kind of signing that I was looking out for. If someone goes back and listens to like a couple of podcasts ago, I mentioned that I want one other player in the midfield who can offer that X factor and can really make things happen. He just seems confident in the ball. He seems like he knows exactly where he needs to be. Plays all across the pitch in multiple different dimensions, so defensively but also offensively. And for me, this is going to be the signing of the window. I'm already thinking about my midfield combinations, but I'm going to stop there and let you react to what I've just said, because I want to see how much of it was similar to what you said.
So good passer, physically got a great motor, has an eye for goal, very hard to dispossess, and can play all 3 levels of the midfield. It kind of sounds like you just described the perfect midfield profile, but I also think you see that in his game. I agree with you 100%. The only thing I'll say is he's not quite, and you kind of alluded to this, he's not stature-wise, he's not huge. He's 5'10", kind of thin, but he plays bigger than that. He's very physical. He does a lot of the dirty work. I don't know if he has the sort of awareness and is always in the right spot defensively as like a Yannick Bright, but he works very hard. And so you see the engine and the motor come out of it. And, you know I'm just parroting back what you just said, but yeah. And then also going forward, I think he has real quality. He's very hard to dispossess. I'm with you, man. I think this is the most exciting signing potentially since Messi, since Suarez. It's certainly the signing of the offseason so far. When we talked about Tadeo Allende, when we talked about Gonzalo Lujan, that was me sort of having faith in Javier Mascherano, seeing something in that player and thinking he could really translate well. This player, I see it, and I am incredibly excited for what he brings to the table. I forgot to mention a couple things yesterday that I want to bring up. He's got 100 professional games now, which is, like, for me, a huge number. 90, 95 professional, and then 8 to 10 international games for the senior level. So that means he's a professional. He's coming in. He has full expectations of what is expected of him. He knows exactly how to be a professional. He succeeded at every level. Won player of the tournaments, won player of the years, right? That type of thing. He's coming from the Portuguese league, not the Venezuelan league, where he might have an adjustment period, or he might have to really sort of, there's a question of if he can handle the added level of talent and physicality. Like, he's seen that. He's played against some of the best teams in the world. And he's done well against them. And now he's coming to the MLS, where I think he's going to be ready to jump in from day one. So I agree with everything you've said. I think this is going to be potentially the most under the radar signing of the entire offseason across the MLS.
Yeah, I want to pick that thread up that you mentioned, that he's got 100 professional games under his belt. He's only 21. He's very young. Technically speaking, he still isn't fully developed as a player. He's a little bit unrefined, and that's okay. But for a 21-year-old, from what I've seen, and again, it's just based on highlights, but you can tell with the way a player carries himself on the pitch. He's played across different levels at the international stage, in European League, in South America. He has tested himself against some of the big oppositions that you would want for a player coming into the MLS to have that kind of experience, right? And he's done that. So just because he's 21 doesn't mean that he's not ready. I think he's probably more ready than Redondo was when he came in, then Yannick Bright obviously was when he came in, then a lot of the players that we brought in last season,
Diego
maybe
Gomez.
even Matias Rojas, I would say, I think he's a more complete player than Rojas as well. And overall,
We'll see.
I think he is being brought in to be a starter. I don't think he's going to be brought in to maybe do a deputy role. I think he's ready to start, honestly.
Okay, we'll talk. I think he comes in. He's the 5th best player on the team after the Barcelona guys.
Hey, we're gonna do our draft very, very, very soon, so we're gonna find out where he stands at least in the first half of the season.
Well, let's talk about the depth now in this position. By the way, he plays as a 10 for Venezuela, so he's also comfortable playing sort of higher up the pitch. For club, he plays in a midfield partnership in a 3-4-3, so he has a lot of he can play all levels of the midfield, and it's really exciting. Javier Mascherano, 4-3-3 or a 4-2-3-1. We'll see what it looks like, and we'll get our first glimpse of that a week from now. But in that farther back spot now, you're talking about having, or 2 spots really, the midfield partnership back there. You're talking about having Sergio Busquets, Segovia, Federico Redondo, Yannick Bright, Benjamin Kermasky, David Ruiz, potentially Julian Gressel. I mean, it is so much depth, and I think you feel comfortable going against whoever you have to play with against, whether it's Monterrey or some club in the Mexican Liga MX club in the latter stages of the Leagues Cup or in the latter stages of the CONCACAF Champions Cup, but also in the very next midweek against an MLS competition, you feel very comfortable putting Kermasky and Yannick Bright out there, or Kermasky and Redondo, or whoever. Like, these are 5-6 names in the midfield that you feel very good about, and I love that, man.
Yeah, there's so many combinations we can play around with again, and I'm excited.
Can I say one more thing?
Yeah, go on.
I also didn't say this yesterday, and I meant to. At the beginning of the offseason, we talked about how maybe they could have both an attacking style midfielder, maybe an 8/10, and also a 6. I think this player solves all of that. So just like I think Gonzalo Lujan gives you that second center back and the backup right back option, I think this player gives you both the extra DM you wanted plus quality as a box to box if you need it. So sorry, I'm
you
in love with
stole the words out of my mouth. I think the theme of the preseason or the theme of the transfer window is versatility. That's what we've gone with in most of the signings that we've had, except Oscar Ostari, who's obviously going to play in goal at all times, unless maybe we put him in front of as a number 9 in one of the preseason games. Versatility is the theme of the hour. This profile is everything that you want from a midfielder. One thing that we struggled with was finding that right balance in the midfield. Now, on paper, for me, what's going to happen is you can go with Sergio Busquets, obviously, who's going to be the number 1 pick in that midfield. If you want to play a little bit more defensively, you put Yannick Bright next to him and you put Telasco next to him. You can get Telasco to play as that number 10 position. You can push Sergio Busquets up and have Telasco sit a little bit alongside Yannick Bright. So many ways that you can play those exact 3 players. You can play them in many different ways and give them different roles. That for me is versatility at its peak, because when you go up against opposition who's hunkering down, who's playing in a low block, and you need to break those low blocks down, you can have both Segovia and Sergio Busquets playing higher up, trying to unlock those defenses with Yannick Bright sitting next to them. Or if you need to have somebody cover the transitions, play Segovia next to Yannick Bright. Amazing. You can go all-out attack if you need to with Redondo, Segovia, and Sergio Busquets. Great combination. You bring in Julian Gressel into midfield with Busquets, Julian Gressel, and Segovia. You now have that physicality with Segovia to be able to protect both Busquets and Gressel. And again, this is all on paper. We'll see how it actually plays out in practice, but there's just so much potential with this signing and how you utilize him. I do think his biggest assets are going to be as an 8, box to box, the role that Diego Gomez used to play. But as you mentioned, you can play him as a number 6 when you need to. And maybe he can do a bit of a more defensive work when required of him, especially during the latter half of the games when we're trying to see games off. Very, very exciting player. The more I talk about it, the more excited I get. So maybe I should stop.
No, I'm with you. I thought you would want to go get a Diego Gomez replacement, but I didn't think you would get a guy as good as Diego Gomez, and I think he has a chance to be like start off where Diego Gomez left off and sort of have a bigger impact. So I don't know what else to say, man. I talked about him for 45 minutes. We just talked about him for another 15. I love this signing. I am so excited for him. I hope this becomes official soon. I mean, we won't see him next weekend, but hopefully we get a chance to see him on that South American tour, which we will talk about later on in this episode, because I'm just so excited about this signing, man. It's awesome.
Yeah, and I think the biggest positive sign out of all this is that everyone I've heard is talking very highly of this player. So there seems to be a unanimous consensus across the Inter Miami fan base that this is a player that we're very excited to bring in. I think he's going to be the favorite signing that I'm going to have this offseason, unless they bring in an absolute baller of a center back. We'll see, but he's definitely going to be one of the players I look out for.
Well, don't change the subject yet, because I have a couple more things to talk about. First of all, they went back to Europe, and they didn't do that really at all under Tata Martino. He was very focused on the South American market. I know we heard that he was negotiating with Mirandes for a center back he worked with the next Mexican national team, but he was very focused in Argentina and Paraguay and in the South American market. And now Sanyehi and Mascherano, they have gone to Europe twice to go find talents. One was Tadeo Allende, who has that Argentine connection, so maybe you don't see it as really going there. But this is a player, no connection to Argentina. He's Venezuelan. He plays for the Venezuelan national team. Javier Mascherano did play against him at the Olympic qualifying tournament last January or maybe early February. So he would have coached against him, but he's playing in Portugal. He's thriving in Portugal, I might add. He's really having a breakout year. So going and finding a player that doesn't have that Argentine connection and doesn't have sort of a connection to your coach, I think is really cool. And then convincing him to come play, not just because of Messi, because if he was Argentine, you might be able to say, well, it was his dream to go play with him. But this is a player that wants to make the next step in his career. And he thinks, after watching what happened with Diego Gomez, he can do that. And I'm really excited about it. I'm really, really excited about it.
Yeah, I think one of the concerns we had with Chris Henderson leaving, with Raul Sanyehi taking over, was, is he going to have A, the pull, B, the resources to actually look out for talent, not just in Argentina, but across the world, and pick out some of these gems that you might miss out on or might never have heard of. And that, for me, has been completely quelled. That hesitation that I had about Raul Sanyehi and Javier Mascherano has been completely quelled, because this is the kind of signing that you want to bring in. Someone that nobody's heard of as such, not very popular, at least in terms of the conversations that Inter Miami fans are having about who to bring in. Doesn't have too much connection with Raul Sanyehi, Javier Mascherano, and seems like this was a player that they looked at during the pre-Olympics, saw him play really well, inquired about him even more, saw that he's doing really well in Portugal, and then went all out for him. And the fact that he wants to come to Inter Miami just speaks really high volume, because he's moving from Europe to the MLS. And as you mentioned, Diego Gomez is going to do so much for this club even after he leaves, because that, for me, is the blueprint of what young players can achieve at this club, can achieve in the MLS. And that's the biggest attraction that's going to be for all of these young players who are thinking about coming to the MLS, who are thinking about playing for Inter Miami. Very exciting times. You and I both are big proponents of young players, and this is the kind of signing that we want to have.
Cynical asks, what's his pace like? He's quick, but he's not the burner that Diego Gomez was. I will say that. He's going to be less imposing, but he has real flair to his game.
And it's also endurance and flair. That's a deadly combination.
Yeah.
I think it's more endurance than pace.
Okay, can I tell you something that's going to be it's going to excite you, I think?
Go on.
And we're going to talk about this in a few minutes, but Baltasar Rodriguez and Facundo Farías are looking like they might do a swap deal, and that would make Facundo Farías not a U22, which would bring us down to 2 U22s with Redondo and Toto Aviles. This is a $2.5 million signing. If he makes $500,000, which is what the other U22s were making, and would be a pay increase for him, that's talking about a cap charge similar to Julian Gressel. This player doesn't have to be a U22 signing. So he could be, he qualifies, but he doesn't have to be, which means they can still go out and get a another U22 player on and spend 10, 15, whatever $million on and bring him in. It doesn't have to be, clearly it doesn't have to be an Argentine. So when we're talking about them building this roster, there is still real potential. And again, if you move Julian Gressel, you've cleared up all of the space you need to get this player in without making him a U22 initiative player. I don't know what to tell you, man. They can still do a lot.
We've got until April, right? That's when the transfer window closes. So the fact that we made so many moves already is already a big sign for what's to come. Bring me another U22, man. That's all I'm going to say. If you can do it, do it. Go out there, find that gem of a player that you're looking for. It could be a striker, it could be a midfielder, it could be a left winger. There's a lot of places in this team that you can still maybe strengthen a little bit. So
yeah, I don't think it's going to be a midfielder now, though.
Yeah, right? I think having another midfielder might be a bit of an overkill. So I agree with you. I don't think we need another midfielder. And I was going to ask you, imagine that we sign that second centre back that we're looking out for. There's still room to improve. What would be your next position that you go for if not that centre back?
Dude, now it's just fun, right? It's just fun.
I think before it turns to full fun, there is room for maybe a striker to come in.
Okay, but
I would say maybe a striker. But yeah, it's just collect the gems, right? Just collect the gems as much as you can.
Right, build your crown out. Josh, I saw this earlier, and so I wanted to bring this back. Josh says, so no huge name to enter Miami with that quote-unquote unlimited budget. We heard Jorge Mas say they have an unlimited budget, and all they've spent so far is $2.5 million. It'll be a little bit more. I guess it's closer to 3.3 because they spent a little bit on Gonzalo Lujan, but they have, I think, room to go out and still break their transfer fee record or get a big signing U22, and it's not going to limit them too much moving forward. They have 2 senior team spots left that aren't a DP player. 3 if you want to save one spot for a DP. And I do think they're going to try and save a spot for a DP in the summer. Go get a center back and go get that third U22 player. And you are talking about a heck of a roster, my guy. And again, you still have a DP spot. That's with only 2 DPs. It is very exciting. Hash says, what is the transfer fee record? It's $12 million. They spent $12 million on Francisco Pizarro back in 2020. John says Segovia will be a U22. I'm not convinced. Gomez was 2.5. 2, he will be a U22. Again, Gomez was taken off of the U22 status at the very end. And Francisco says, is Miami keeping the third DP for Neymar in the summer? I think so. We'll talk about that more in a little bit. I just want to keep talking about this, man, because I'm so excited about Segovia. It is awesome, and I think it's really a game-changing move, and I'm very proud of them for making it happen.
And honestly, I don't think we need that superstar level player, at least at this point in time, if we can actually bolster the squad with the most important players, and that's the role players, right? You need players to be able to do a role in this team who may not command that level of respect from the fans in terms of their name and prestige. But these are the players who are going to win you the league at the end of the day. I can totally imagine a scenario where maybe Messi's unavailable, Suarez is unavailable. We need somebody to step up, and there you have Telasco Segovia sitting in the midfield running the show for us. And that's what we're going to look at and be like, this preseason, when we went out to get him, he was the most important signing, not someone like a Neymar, not someone like a Kevin De Bruyne, not someone like a Pogba. So for me, this is the kind of at least start that you need to the transfer window. Yeah, I would love for another big name signing to come in, but I'll be okay if they're delaying it to the summer just to make sure it's the right kind of big name signing that comes in.
Again, I see a lot of people in the chat are saying he's going to be a U22 spot.
And that's
doesn't
fine.
have to be.
Doesn't
he
have
could
to
be.
That's
yeah,
fine.
He might be, but he doesn't have to be. Like he's going to have the same cap charge as Julian Gressel, who's clearly not. Similar to what Nico Frede was last year, who wasn't a U20. Like they can fit this in without having to make him a U22 in a way that they can't do with Federico Redondo or Toto Aviles or Facundo Farias. So I'm not convinced that they won't go out and sign another U22. And it might not be this winter. It might be in the summer. They might not, but I really like this. And again, you guys are talking about the financial aspect of this. If you go look at the numbers, you go look at how the roster is shaking up, it is 100% possible. But anyways, let's talk about Baltasar Rodriguez, because on Thursday, Cesar Luis Merlo, who I think is probably, if not the best, one of the best journalists in the South American market, reported that this Facundo Farías-Baltasar Rodriguez swap is advancing. Those two are going to, in theory, if this fall goes through, swap on a 1-year loan deal with each team having a purchase option. And what that would mean is that Inter Miami would take Baltasar Rodriguez with no transfer fee and move off Facundo Farías, who has the transfer fee attached to him. And it would free up a U22 spot. You would get, I think, a similar player, younger, a guy I think that Javier Mascherano would appreciates a little bit more, but it frees up that U22 spot and you get a similar style of player.
Yeah, not sure if he's as player driven and as skillful as Facu Farias. He's maybe a little bit more pragmatic as a player, but I don't mind it. I think it's a good signing if this is something that you need to do to make the roster stronger, and then you go out and bring someone like Segovia. I think Baltasar Rodriguez and Telasco Segovia are two very good signings if they have to come in tandem. I see somebody mentioning that they had to let Facu Farias go because they wanted to sign Segovia. Again, another discussion about U22 that we can maybe get into later, but this is a great package deal for us. I'm happy with it. I think he's going to have an important role to play. I do think he's going to be behind Fafa Pico, and maybe it'll be interesting to see where he plays along that front line. But again, a versatile player who can do multiple roles for this team.
Yeah, and he can play as a 10. He's not just a wing player. Like, I think Tadeo Allende is probably more of a winger. Maybe can play both sides. But I think when you're talking about Baltasar Rodriguez, you're talking about a guy who can play as a 10, maybe even more comfortably than Facundo Farias could, who I think slots in better on the wings. So this is reshaping the roster in the way you want. And maybe we have to dedicate a whole episode to him if and when this becomes official. But it does seem like we're trending that way. I don't think this would be reported as widely as it has been and by as good of sources as it has been if it wasn't close to happening.
Yep.
And I think even if, I saw a lot of people sad about Facundo Farias potentially leaving, even if this isn't a huge talent upgrade or even potentially any talent upgrade for the roster, I think it really helps. And for just building Javier Mascherano's team the way he wants it, I think it really helps. So I'm a big fan of this.
It's coming together. That's all I'm going to say. It's coming together really well.
Have you looked into him at all yet?
I've seen clips of him. I've seen a little bit of him. We spoke about him, I think, last podcast as well. I don't know if there's enough of a sample size to judge him as a player and see what he'll bring to this team, especially compared to Facu Farias. But I think at the outset, it seems like an interesting signing. It seems like somebody who can play multiple roles. He, as you said, he can play as a number 10. I won't even be surprised if he's pushed up a little bit further to try and complement Luis Suarez. He's young as well. He's 23, I believe, or maybe even younger. And yeah, if you can mold him into the player that you want him to be for this team, I think he can definitely do a job. They've looked at him and they think he can, contribute to this team. So I'll give him the benefit of doubt.
Yeah, and I think just the way it sets up for the roster, I think is really nice. We'll probably do a deeper dive on him if this becomes official. But I want to have a quick conversation to set up our next topic about how this roster is setting up. I think there's room to add a backup striker. I think there's room to move some players on, including Facundo Farias, Julian Gressel, and Robert Taylor, guys we've talked about a lot. I'm not as convinced Robert Taylor is going to move as I was 6 weeks ago. Same thing with Drake Callender. But right back, I think you're fine. Left back, I think you're fine. In the midfield now, after Segovia, I think you're in a really good spot. I think you still want to add a center back. And I think up top, at right wing, you're fine. At left wing, you're fine. And a striker, you could probably use another body. I think this is how they want to set up the roster for now, because I think they want to keep that left wing spot good enough so that they can still upgrade in the summer if they can make it happen.
You know what? The way I was looking at it was when you construct a team, you think about it as there being certain linchpins in every position that are unreplaceable. Think of your Leo Messi in the front line. Think of your Sergio Busquets in the middle. and maybe another center back player who can be that linchpin. That's the thing, right? We don't have that center back player right now in that who can be that undroppable Tim Ream, Walker Zimmerman sort of a player who is going to be on that in that role at every single game. So you definitely need to find that center back. Then in the left wing spot and in the central midfield, apart from Sergio Busquets, I think we've really surrounded Busquets with some interesting combinations, with some interesting pieces that can be moved around, that can complement each other. And I think the balance is going to be there if Javier Mascherano can find it. Last season, the balance was the biggest issue for me. Our midfield was all over the place. There were players who could do things that they did the same things right and the same things wrong, so you didn't necessarily have solutions when you needed to find one. Now it feels like you surrounded Sergio Busquets with so much versatility that you're going to be able to solve multiple different problems with the same set of players. I don't know if we can say the same about the left wing spot. You're right, it seems a little bit too flexible, a little bit too versatile. Fafa Pico, not necessarily the starter, but not necessarily a bench player either. So he could be the starter at least for this part of the season. But that linchpin in the left wing spot is still missing. You have that with Luis Suarez up top. So I think we've surrounded ourselves with good players right now. Need that.
Let me ask you, at left wing, Fafa Pico, Robert Taylor, Baltasar Rodriguez, Tadeo Allende. That's good enough.
Oh, you agree? For sure. For sure.
I think that they're building this roster so that it's good enough, but still has the potential to add the big piece, which brings us to our next topic. Neymar goes on CNN this week and was asked about potentially teaming up with Luis Suarez and Lionel Messi again, and he had some coy comments on it. Listen, guys, I know not everyone loves the idea of adding Neymar. I didn't make it the title. I didn't make it the first topic. I didn't make it the thumbnail. But we got to talk about it because it would be awesome. And here's what I will say. Someone on his team came up to the reporter and asked them and said, hey, you might want to ask about Messi and Suarez. And that's why that question got asked, because someone on his team wants those little tricks and rumors to be out there. And so he was asked about it, and he said, you never know. And he said it would be very fun and exciting and all that. So once again, we're back to Inter Miami trying to get Neymar. And I think for a lot of reasons off the field, it makes a ton of sense. No player on earth, Cristiano Ronaldo would be, I think, a bigger signing than Neymar, but obviously that's not going to happen. So other than that, Neymar is the biggest potential signing you can have from a marketing perspective, from a fanfare perspective, from a prestige perspective. Obviously there are players that are better, right? Mbappe and Haaland would be sort of better players now, but from a global prestige standpoint, I don't think there's a better signing. And so if you're the owners, I think it makes all the sense in the world to build a team that is very good enough, but still with the potential to upgrade at one specific spot, and that's left wing. And I think they're going to try to do that in the summer. I think that's where we're heading right now.
I didn't know that someone from his team actually went up to the reporter to ask him the question. Listen, it's the worst kept secret in world football that Inter Miami wants Neymar and Neymar wants Inter Miami. At this point in time, it's a matter of figuring out how this deal is going to go, what the financials of that are, whether he's going to come in this transfer window, whether he's going to come in the summer. I think it's more likely in the summer. What the Saudi League is going to look like, how much money they want from him. It's a whole bunch of questions, but it's not about intent. I think Inter Miami wants to get this deal done, and Neymar wants this to happen. You know my position on this. I have been reticent about Neymar. I've been hesitant to bring him in. I'm going to take a different position this time around. I was concerned that if we go all out for a player like Neymar, who's very injury prone, probably one of the most talented players after Messi and Cristiano Ronaldo in world football, in modern football, but very injury prone, don't know how much he'll contribute to the team. And my biggest worry was that in trying to pursue his signing, we sacrifice some of the other pieces that we need to build for this roster. Doesn't look like that's the case. As you mentioned, as we've discussed the left wing spot, we are building there. We have put in some really good role players in there. The rest of the squad is looking good. As long as we bring in a center back and maybe a third choice goalkeeper, it'll be a really good, well-constructed roster in this transfer window. So now if we bring in Neymar, I won't be as hesitant because we haven't sacrificed that overall health of the squad just to bring in that shiny, precious object into the club to draw attention of fans. So I'm a little bit more receptive to this move right now. And again, depends on how the roster shapes up and when this move happens. But it just feels like everyone wants to get this deal done. It's just a matter of whether it can make sense financially.
I will say, there has been good journalists down in South America that have continued to mention Santos as a potential destination. That's where he came through, and so I don't want to say that Neymar is committed to Miami in the same way, but I think this is what Inter Miami is trying to do, and that's why I wanted to talk about it. I think they want this player, and I think they're going to do everything they can to make it happen, including keep the roster in a way that makes it possible to bring him in. So even though they're going to have a DP spot, I don't think they're going to use it until they know.
And I think there's another thing. They may not be entirely sure whether this is possible or feasible, or whether Neymar will eventually say yes to us. So that's why they're making sure that the overall squad looks good, in case this falls through. And that, for me, is the best way you can approach this, right? Keep your options open. Make sure that we're living in a reality where Neymar's not coming to Inter Miami, so that in case it doesn't happen, we're still strong enough to be able to compete at multiple fronts. So I think that's a good transfer strategy, and we'll see what happens. He has options, and I'm sure Messi is going to be trying to convince him as much as possible.
And listen, this is what Miami did 2 years ago when they wanted to get Messi. Is there was rumors about him signing an extension with PSG. There was rumors that he was going to go to Saudi Arabia for $1 billion. Like, all of that was there, and Miami was like, we trust and we believe that we can build this relationship in a way that can get this player to Miami. And we're going to build a team that has DP spots open, has U22 spots open. And if we have to suffer a little bit because of that, and boy, did they suffer a lot back then, they're going to make it. They're going to do what it takes to make happen. And so I think that's what they're doing now. And they're trying to line up Neymar. And it would be fun. The vibes would be cool. Like, I get a lot of people would be mad about it, but the vibes would be cool.
For as long as he plays, whether it's 1 game or 5 games or 10 games or 20 games, the vibes are going to be phenomenal. So that's for sure.
It would be cool. Okay, last topic. The preseason schedule, official. 5 preseason games. We knew about next Saturday's game against Club America in Las Vegas. That's been on the table for a while. February 14th, Valentine's Day, against Orlando City. That's been on the table for a while, but the rest of the schedule has now been finalized. January 29th, they're going down to Peru to play Universitario. February 2nd, they're flying up to Panama to play Sporting San Miguelito. And then February 8th in Honduras, they're playing Olimpia at San Pedro Sula. And then obviously that final game against Orlando City. 5-game preseason. I love it. I would have liked to see an Argentine club or a Brazilian club, but I think Peru, Panama, and Honduras is a fun little trip there.
Yeah, I think we predicted this well. We anticipated some options being filled up, and those middle games from Universitario to Olimpia, we knew they were going to play in and around South America. I'm very excited for this. This is perfect. Better than last preseason, where we had a bit of a stretch and we played many different time zones. I'm glad we're sticking to one time zone this time around. It's local, but it's also good competition. It's difficult teams in difficult conditions, and we're playing MLS teams, so there's a bit of familiarity there. There's a bit of experience that we're going to get from a lot of these games. Just the right amount of games as well. I think well constructed, well planned out. I'm glad that this is happening. Can't wait for it to get started soon.
Yeah, I think that Universitario game is going to be at altitude, which will be good experience for the guys, especially the young guys, when it comes to playing potentially in Mexico City later on in the calendar year. So I think it sets the team up well for the CONCACAF Champions Cup. You get sort of that away at CONMEBOL, away at CONCACAF feeling, and I think it's going to serve this team well. They got a great experience last year going to Monterrey. Well, great experience from a learning perspective. And so hopefully all of that pays dividends this year. And I really like this calendar. Any of these games that you really sort of stands out to you?
I think Club America and Orlando are going to be really fun. They're going to be fiery. Everyone knows Club America. The atmosphere is going to be really good. And then Orlando is obviously a derby game. Whether it's preseason or whether it's mid-season, it's always going to be a fun affair. Obviously, Orlando had a better season than us when it comes to the playoffs, so they might create a little bit of an atmosphere there as well. But overall, I think it's going to be fun. Those two are the games that I'm looking for.
Yeah, well, let's talk about logistics for a minute, because the first game in Las Vegas, we're going to be without Drake Callender, we're going to be without Kramaski, we're going to be without a lot of these new signings. But you add another 10 days and a trip across the continent or the hemisphere, you get 5 new players in, you get your goalkeeper back, you get your young player back, right? That Universitario game is going to be like real preseason prep. And I'm very excited for it. It's going to be cool to see the guys get back on this January 18th game next weekend. Fun to see soccer, fun to see what Javier Masin has planned for the team. But I think that January 29th game is when it really starts. I assume all of these games are going to be on Apple TV. The Club America game and the Orlando City game will be, but we haven't gotten confirmation on the other 3. I assume they all will be. And so if that's the case, you and I will be doing, pregame, postgame stuff. But yeah, any player, I mean, if we had structured it this way, we could have talked for an hour about this preseason tour. But like the quick questions, is there one player you're really excited to see make a jump or find a new position? Like, what are you most looking forward to for this preseason?
Yeah, there's this one player from Argentina who's really up and coming. His name is Lionel Messi. I'm really excited to see him play. People have really bigged him up and talked a lot about him. So I'm excited for that. No, man, it's obviously new signings. You want to see Fafa Pico take the pitch with that Inter Miami shirt on. Who would have thought that, right? I want to see Segovia take the pitch as well, see what he's capable of. Is he worth the hype? How is he going to fit into this team? You got Tadeo Allende coming in as well, maybe Baltasar Rodriguez eventually, and just see some of the old players shine brighter. Redondo, I think, has a big step up to make this season. I think he's capable of it. I think he's going to have a better season overall. Yannick Bright, I have a feeling that he's going to have to prove himself again this season to find that role for himself. And I think he's going to be able to do it very quickly. He's going to become Javier Mascherano's favorite player. I'm sure of that. But I'm excited to see him play as well. Ian Frey, I don't know when he's going to come back from his injury, but I'm excited for him to be back as well. And yeah, it's just looking good overall. But what I'm most excited about is to see how Javier Mascherano sets this team up and what his tactics are going to be, because that's going to determine how much hair we have on our heads by the end of the season. So that for me is one thing that I am definitely looking forward to.
Yeah, I'm thinking back to last preseason. We were doing that 3-5-2 that Tata Martino really wanted, and it was awful. And we saw it like from the very get-go. I think our first game was against Dallas at the Cotton Bowl, and it was just really bad. It never worked. And Tata persisted with that into the season. I hope what Mascherano shows us is something much more effective. Federico Redondo, I'm excited to see if he can take a jump. He's settled in, right? Last year he came in after the season had already started. He got an injury right away. I want to see him settle in and see what he can be. I spent a lot of time last year talking about how he's not ready yet, and that it should be Yannick Bright, it should be Busquets, and it should be Diego Gomez, and Redondo should be the next guy. I think now you've had the offseason, you've had a chance to settle in, take that next step, prove that you belong. You just talked about Yannick Bright having to prove himself all over again. I think Redondo is going to get some benefit of the doubt. He's going to get opportunities early. But let's see him prove it. Let's see him step up and be. Listen, again, the transfer fee we paid for him kind of demands he's one of the best midfielders in MLS. If he can step up to that, and you add, oh man, you add Segovia, you add Busquets, you add Yannick Bright. I mean, you're talking about potentially a monster midfield. Makes me excited. Last question before we wrap this up. At the beginning of the offseason, I said it would be very difficult for Inter Miami to bring a better team to the table in 2025 than they had in 2024. They just had so much depth. The roster was so well constructed. It was too deep in guys who were confident in basically everywhere. I'm not as confident that that's the case anymore. I think 2025 has a chance to be an even better team. Just the way this offseason is shaking out. I'm really excited about it.
I don't want to jinx it, so I'm not going to say much. It's a very good offseason thus far, but the business is not done yet. You need to bring it home, right? There are a couple of really important areas of this team that you need to cover, and you need to cover with good players. So as long as that center-back signing is a home run, I I would probably jump on that train that you just mentioned of this being a really good roster as well. As good as last season, maybe not, but potentially better in the sense that we have better profiles and better chemistry and better balance across the pitch. So overall, it's shaping up to be really, really good, especially that midfield, man. So exciting, but there's still room for improvement.
And games are won and lost in the midfield, man, for real. Anything else you want to? I mean, everything we talked about today, I feel like we could have done a whole episode on the preseason, what you're looking forward to. Obviously, I already did an episode on Segovia, so that would have been easy. Facundo Farías-Baltasar Rodriguez swap, that is, I think, potentially really exciting. And then Neymar, obviously. Listen, I get people are frustrated about Neymar, but it would be really fun. Let's just put it that way. It'd be fun. Maybe it will break our hearts not long after, but it would be really fun.
Good vibes for a short run. That's all I'm hoping for.
Yeah, well, hopefully for a long run. But yeah. Okay, anything else, man? Or we'll be back next week.
Yeah, we'll be back next week. I think the plan is we're 1 week away from the preseason game. Next Saturday, I believe, is the first preseason game. We're probably going to come in midweek with another episode just to wrap everything up when it comes to the off season and before the games get thick and fast, right? And if they're available on Apple TV, we're going to be there doing the pregame and the postgame show. So lots of games coming up, lots of episodes coming up. Hope everyone sticks around and joins us in it.
Yeah, guys, I just wanted to say, because I know a lot of people have started watching us since the season ended. We do a pregame show, postgame show every game. And so as long as the games are televised, you can join us live in the hour before kickoff. And we're talking about the Herons and we're talking about the other team and the matchup and all that stuff. I think for this first game, we might only do half an hour, 45 minutes, just because, Club America is not that important for our overall season, but we will be live pregame, and I hope you guys will join us, and that'll be a lot of fun. But until then, guys, hope you have a wonderful day as always. Enjoy your weekend, and we'll see you guys next time. Hey everybody, thanks for tuning in. Do us a favor and hit that like and subscribe button. Since our first viewer, sharing this with you all has been the very best part. So from the beginning until the end, thank you for being a part of this, and have a wonderful day.